Awesome. All right, let's get this going. So, delighted to welcome everyone back to the Powered by People podcast, season 3. This is the newest season in the Powered by People podcast. And today, I'm delighted to welcome Edan Haddock, who lives in the wonderful city of Melbourne, Australia. He's been in TA now for over 10 years, worked across multiple industries, and now finds himself as the head of people, talent, and experience. I believe I got that right, for Movember. So welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Bill. Yeah, you were really close with that job title. Head of talent and people experience. You just got the people and the talent around the wrong way, but that's all right. I'll forgive you. You're a Mo bro. You're allowed.
Perfect. Hello, Mo, bro. How are you?
I'm doing well, mate. It's coming into the warmer season over here, and I live just near Melbourne. I'm about 2 hours out of Melbourne in a town called Ballarat. It's an old gold rush town, and just really beautiful. You know, we're moving into the seasons where we'll be planting tomatoes soon. We're picking all our snow peas and just loving the end of spring, really.
Yeah, everyone who's going to be listening to this, the majority will be in the UK, very jealous of that weather change that you're getting right now, as we're just hitting the freezing cold month of November. So, yeah, very jealous.
I find that funny over there because, over here for Movember and during November, like we're all out doing physical challenges and, people are running and people are cycling and hiking mountains and all of that. But over there, like you got to do it in your puffers, right? Like it's freezing November.
Exactly that. I did the 5K a day challenge last year. I was running every day and videoing every day. And you just saw that the seasons that we had here. One day it was snowing and then you had like blistering rain in your face. So I can imagine very, very different. Maybe one day I'll move for the month of November to do my fundraising over there instead.
Oh, totally. Come over and join us. You're always welcome, Bill, for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we usually start the podcast with some quick fire questions, just to get us going. There's 5 and then a bonus question with myself. So usually when I host these podcasts, I like to chuck in a little bonus question as well. So first things first, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Oh, I wanted to be Billy Idol when I was a kid. That's why I stick with the blonde hair and still bleach my hair. I just thought he was amazing. So that was the dream. Now I can't sing, I can't play a musical instrument, I can't do any of that. So never happens, but I still fancy the pants off him, right? And I still want to be him. So there we go.
Absolutely. Early bird or night owl?
Oh, I'm early living in the country, and my commute is actually a couple of hours to Melbourne. So I'm on the 6 a.m. country train with my bike every morning. So I've got pretty used to the early mornings.
Awesome. First job you ever had?
Yeah, I actually started my career as a florist. I worked for a friend's flower shop after school, a friend's mother. And she kind of had all of us kids going in there and helping out and paying us, sorry, Mr. Taxman, but it was a long time ago, cash in hand. And do you know what? I actually stayed in floristry until I was 30 and then had the career change to HR. So yeah, stuck with it. I enjoyed it.
That's really cool. Well, we need to dig into that in a bit more in a moment then as well once we got through these questions. I'd love to hear about how you made the change into HR from the floristry world. One app you can't live without.
Oh, geez. Thankfully, I've been with my partner for 25 years, so it's not one of the typical gay apps that you'd be thinking. Look, to be honest, at the moment, I've gotten really addicted to a card game app, and it's really great for mindfulness, actually. And it's just playing hearts.
Awesome.
And yeah, just sort of taught myself, and I can't live without it at the moment. It kind of helps me switch off when I'm getting a little bit flustered or struggling with the volumes and all of that we all deal with in our game. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a very low stress, low impact, low game, I can imagine as well. So that's pretty cool. Nice. Dream holiday destination.
Oh, at the moment, I've been to a lot of places in the course of my life, but I'd really love to go to Taipei.
Ooh.
Amazing food culture, amazing art culture. amazing youth culture. Like it just looks fabulous. Fashion. Yeah, I really want to go to Taipei. That's my
Have to,
next on the
that
list.
introduce you to my sister there. My sister's lived there for 10 years now. She's yeah, she's married to a husband's from Taipei, her two children. They've just moved back to the UK, but yeah, she was living there for, I think it was over 10 years, it might have been as well. But she loved it and it's an incredible place. One of my biggest regrets is not going out and visiting. She still reminds me about all the time.
Oh, I can't believe you didn't. Anyway, hopefully we'll both end up there at some stage. Might even bump into each other. You never know.
Exactly. We'll have the time for that. Again, maybe we'll do our campaign fundraising over there.
There we go.
Still gonna be better weather than the UK around November time. Last question, bonus question now. What's your morning brew of choice?
My morning brew.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I live in Melbourne, where we're known for coffee, right? So so there's always a large latte, and that all sounds pretty lame, but I have to say I have a good proper brew cup of tea every morning, like a Yorkshire brew. Like I'm talking your language here, and proper strong. Yes, nothing to coffee first thing in the morning.
Can't beat a good cup of tea, to be fair. I'm big on the coffee in the morning just to get me going, especially now with two young kids keeping me up most of the night. But yeah, Melbourne's huge for coffee, right? I mean, you just said it there. I mean, I didn't realize this until someone told me recently, but Melbourne's huge for coffee. They're really coffee first people there.
Yeah, we totally are, and I think a lot of it's to do with the Italian immigration in Melbourne, and just Italian families coming out here and setting up cafes. We've just got this huge cafe culture, and it's just gone generation to generation, and we're all coffee obsessed, and really good quality coffee as well. Like we're not talking Starbucks or what do you have, Costa? We're not talking.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
you're
absolutely
talking
change. Yeah.
proper Italian coffee. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, you're talking the language there. I'd much rather find a local independent that really knows what they're doing with a coffee than the McDonald's version of coffee that you get from Starbucks and these kind of fast chain restaurants, fast chain coffee shops.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Um, cool. So to dig into it, first of all, thanks so much for coming on the podcast. It's been something that I've wanted to do for a while now, to have you on, to pick your brains, talk to you about some of the incredible work that you're doing there, not only in the HR space, but obviously with the company that's very close to my heart, Movember. And would love to talk to you around some of the topics there. Um, how long have you been with Movember, and what does your work include there, day to day in your role there?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been with Movember over a year now, so I'm coming into my second campaign. We tend to measure our length of time by campaigns. When you ask around, it's, oh, this is my seventh campaign. This is my first campaign, but this is my second. So I've been with Movember over a year. I look after talent and people experience globally. So I have a team of three plus a AI agent that is part of our team as well. And we Movember's a lot bigger than people sometimes realize. We have teams in London, we have teams in Toronto, we have teams in Dublin, in LA, in Melbourne. We have teams in some scattered teams in New Zealand. Like it's a really big global footprint, and I look after end-to-end talent, both professional recruitment and on the fundraising marketing side of the moustache, but then also the academic recruitment and research recruitment, all of that for the Movember Institute of Men's Health. But we look after everything else as well, from wellness to engagement, to onboarding to L&D. We've got a pretty small team with a pretty big remit, and we love what we do. It's good fun.
And is this your first time working in a non-profit?
It is actually. I did start my professional career. uh, I would call it a not-for-profit, but it was more like it was a chamber of commerce, basically, when I transitioned from floristry, but it wasn't really a for purpose. It was more a business network kind of chamber of commerce. But after that, yeah, I've either been in corporate and agency. Higher ed is probably the closest I've ever got, working for one of our biggest universities for a while. But first for purpose, and that was intentional too.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I mean, I ask because it obviously has those challenges, right? Of trying to. It's a big topic at in the world at the moment of doing more with less, and that's even more apparent on every pound or every dollar spent working in a non-profit. I'd imagine has to have impact, right? And that includes obviously the talent that you're hiring, the people that you're hiring, and how you're running a budget for a team there in a non-profit versus companies similarly in the past. It must, it must have its challenges.
Look, I don't know. I kind of rebel a little bit against the do more with less. Like, I
Yeah.
think where we are at the moment in terms of technology and accessibility of that technology, I think where it would be a challenge in the corporate world is procurement, basically, for
Mm.
lack of a better word, because it's really hard to get, technology and get access to technology and to get things approved and to go through all of those various layers. And, things are enterprise and you're working on a really large scale. But with an organization like Movember, we're very much a test and learn as long as it's, we're not breaking the law and as long as we're, data security and all of that is where it needs to be. And we would never lose sight of that. But we kind of play around with it all. And I have to say, like, it's our function operate like we're pretty advanced in what we do, but we spend very little, and that's for that reason. We're always ahead on emerging tech, and just playing and trying things and creating, and it works really well. But I get why people are talking do more than less. I think it's a very different environment in the corporate space.
Yeah, absolutely. Sticking with Movember then as a business, and then I'd love to dive into that in more detail. I've got a bunch of questions I'd love to ask you here, but for the people listening to this that may not know what Movember does, how it was founded, and what their mission and purpose is, I think having got involved with Movember myself, and speaking to people about it, some people kind of seem to know bits about it. They might know it for the prostate cancer work that it does, or the testicular cancer work that it does. Some people might really just know it for the mustache growing and people wanting, that opening, making people open up and talking about men's mental health and things like that.
Mm.
So, if you wouldn't mind, it'd be great to hear, what Movember is, how it was founded, and what their mission and purpose is as a business.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's a really interesting success story, Movember. I mean, and really well known in Australia in terms of our origins, but perhaps not necessarily in other markets. I mean, this was two guys going to the pub who had a family member with cancer, and they said we need to raise some funds for charity, and what can we do? So rather than running a marathon, they went, let's bring back the mo. Like, and 23 years ago, no one had facial hair, and I remember, those days you would rarely see, you had to be clean shaven at work. And I can't believe we're saying that, right? Like those are back in the days that your tats were hidden and your
Yeah.
face was clean and you had a, short back and sides.
Yeah.
And they thought, hey, what a great idea to grow a moustache and bring back the moustache. And it was all very silly, and they were able to raise a lot of funds, and it kind of snowballed from there and became a movement and became an annual phenomenon. And one of our founders is still working with us, and he's still in the office a couple of days a week. And I think that's just fabulous as well. Like that he's still so connected to what we do. And we do a lot. Um, you're right. A lot of people associate Movember as a fundraising charity, and we always will be. And that's where the bulk of our
Mm.
funds come from that we can invest. But and makes me a little bit nervous to say this, but like in terms of the Institute of Men's Health, there are probably around 70 different programs that we're delivering globally. Some of them are huge, but some of them are tiny, right? But all of them have really big impact. And that can be anything from our research arm and the work that we're doing in terms of masculinities at the moment that is really important. Uh, Young men in a digital world and how young men are, I suppose, viewing a healthy male. Men's health literacy, the work that we do in Indigenous communities, the work that we do to talk to men within the sporting codes. Like I could just go on and on and on. And then there's all the wonderful work that we do with prostate and testicular cancer. And we funded a treatment for prostate cancer that is more effective than chemotherapy. In fact, 4 times more effective than chemotherapy. So, like, it's high impact work, and for too long, men have been silent about their health, and a lot of what we do is just that advocacy to get men to open up and talk to each other and have a beer with a mate in the pub, just like our founders did 23 years ago.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's such an the work that it's done, the just around not only obviously like you say the campaigns that it's launched, the impact that it's had, but just day to day in the culture of men now being starting to talk more, starting to normalize having conversations around health, mental health, the battles they're going through, whatever they may be. You also touched a chord there for me. I remember my early days in recruitment being handed a razor to make sure I came to work with some stubble on the face, and my boss at the time handed over a razor and said, "Yep, go and get shaved in the bathroom. 'Cause you're not going to work today. You have to go and have a shave." So that was definitely what it was like when we started out our careers, right?
Right. It's so funny to think about it. And, I remember I used because I was in fin services for a long time in talent. And how did we ever wear those suits? And like, think Australian heat, think 40-degree days that
Yeah.
in a suit and tie, right? Like, how did we
Yeah.
do it?
Every single day, suit and tie. I mean, it's you still see it in London. Obviously in some certain industries, you still wear your suits and ties, but it's yeah, the world has changed, especially post COVID. It's
Oh,
changed
yeah.
so much, hasn't it? Now it's
Yeah.
which for me personally for the better. I mean, some people still like the suit, and fair play, and each to their own. But yeah, for me, it's I'm glad that we've gone away from suits every single day, especially in the boiling heat.
Oh,
I know you can have some facial hair because I look about 7 years old every time I shave this off. So it's good to be able to hang
I'm
something with
nervous
some.
about losing mine on the 1st of November. I don't think I'll, it's been on my face for over 12 months. Now
Yeah.
what I'm gonna look like.
Well, it's a bit of a running joke in the office here. Well, the virtual office, I should say, at the Rec Hub here, because um, it takes me a long while to grow a beard. So last year when I did the campaign, by the end of the month, it was just starting to show the tash. So I'm kind of debating still in my head whether or not I go clean shaven and grow it all the way until the end, and basically end up having a month of no hair on my face, or leaving it in and grooming it every week and letting it grow from at least a base layer. So I've got some
Oh,
sort
no,
of tash to
yeah,
be able
that's
to.
a rule. You have to have it
I
so you
know.
place. It's a rule, Bill. I'll
Oh
hold you to
man.
that. And don't worry if it's just a little bit of fluff, like we say.
Yeah.
We've got a big campaign around this shitmo save lives, mate.
Yeah.
That's so
Very.
never be afraid of it.
Made
Never
on
is
mind that will
keep
be now.
someone.
Yeah, exactly. Just put some mascara in it just to make it show
That's
a
right.
little bit more as well. Borrow the wise mascara just to show it. But yeah, on that note then, how do you see the conversation has changed around men's mental and physical health in the workplace? Something that obviously the organization works on, but obviously it's something that obviously must be big internally as well as a company. But in your opinion, how have you seen that conversation's changed?
Yeah, look, in all honesty, I think we need to do more. Um, I think there are some organizations that really wrap their arms around Movember, and it's becomes part of their corporate social responsibility. And I think that's fabulous. Over here in Australia, and I'm connected to a lot of HR leaders, and quite often when they've got their calendar of events and all of the wonderful things people do throughout the year, whether that's from culture days, or we have things for breast cancer awareness, like all of those things that happen throughout the year, and there are there seems to be something every month. November sometimes gets overlooked, but I think I think what is great is that men tend to talk to each other a little bit more, and I think we are becoming to that point we were talking about earlier, a lot more relaxed in terms of bringing our whole selves to work. I think the days of even if you are wearing a suit, but the days of having to show up and be something that you're not, I think we've broken down a lot of that in the workplace, and people can be authentic, and they can be real, and they can have real conversations. And the way we cultures and the way we interact, it's less stuffy, and you form very deep personal relationships in the workplace now. A lot of organizations have moved away from hierarchy and that managerial approach to leadership. So you know when we have our one-on-ones with teams, we talk about their feelings and how they're doing, how they're coping with pressures, how they're coping with stress. And then you've got all the amazing tools that can support your team, whether that's things like Headspace or, even mindfulness or apps that your teams can tap into. I think we're doing a really good job in that space, but I do think we've still got a long way to go. I don't think we're there yet. And I think there is still a lot of pressure on men. Unfortunately, the stereotype of, being a breadwinner and all of that still exists for a lot of men. And, needing to show up and needing to present in a way that maybe isn't as authentic and not as vulnerable. And I still think that, there's work to be done.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I talk about this a lot actually when we're doing the Movember campaigning and having conversations around, I think some of the issues that exist in men's health. And I think one thing I always go back to is growing up. I've got two sisters, and growing up, and they would always have conversations as they got into their teens around women's health, breast cancer charities, things like that. How to check for breast cancer, how to check yourself. They were having these normal conversations, and also just talking about feelings a lot. Like they were doing that way better, not all of them, but way better than men were ever doing it. And men, growing up, we were never taught. I mean, I was never taught anything about prostate cancer or testicular cancer.
No.
Certainly never spoken about men's health, men's mental health, because it was always, man up, shut up, get on with it, type phrases that were chucked out there every single day. Whereas, it was often, I would see, mums checking in with daughters saying, how are you feeling? How's it going? And then they would have those, warming conversations, and girls would be able to open up. And it was just from personal experience, obviously, not everyone, but that was something growing up that was very relevant for me. And now, I think seeing it in a workplace, and obviously the Rec Hub work with all kinds of different businesses, from startups to large corporates, where some companies are getting it right. Some companies are still just tick boxing, unfortunately. I think that still definitely exists. So where they'll say they have a strategy in place for health and mental well-being and things like that in the workplace, when, but when push comes to shove, that they don't. And, they're like, well, that person's not quite with it. We'll have to get them replaced quite quickly and things like that. It still does exist definitely in the workplace. So I think
Absolutely.
I see there's still so much that has to be done, but it seems to be heading in the right direction, which
I think it is. And but I do think, that preventative work that you're talking about, I think sometimes these things don't come to light until it's perhaps too late, and when a man is perhaps burnt out or hasn't been able to freely. I mean, these generational. To your point, I grew up with a sister as well, but if I was ever upset, it would be my mother that I would go for a hug. Like I don't think my dad's ever hugged me my entire life, right? Like it's just not. You don't talk about your feelings with that generation of men for some reason. They because their generation above them never talked about their feelings, and I think our generation are a lot better. And then we look at Gen Z and they're fabulous, right? So we are, and the future workforce and the future leaders that we are developing into our organizations are just so much better at this. So I think we'll continue to see shift and continue to see a change.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you mentioned it there about leadership being trained on these topics and having it in place. I think I read something at a Movember event recently. I think there was a quote by Robin Williams that said, men don't fake depression, they fake being okay.
That's right.
So you never really know what's going on. And that really hit home. And, being able to actually know that someone might be struggling with things, obviously be kind, but know that people might be struggling with something, knowing how to check in, knowing how to have a conversation, knowing how to get someone to open up. As leaders, it's a responsibility. I think it should be a responsibility. I think moving towards certain leadership roles, being able to have that emotional intelligence to have those conversations, or at least spot when things aren't quite right and point people in the right direction.
That's right. That's right. And to have the resources available and the support. I mean, things like, mental health first aid, that didn't exist when I started in, the corporate world. And, I think these things are wonderful, but I think, I'd argue every leader should be a mental health first aider and should know how to respond and should know how to recognize the signs and be that person to support and have the resources available to them to know what to do. So absolutely.
Another thing I was going to ask about was, and we kind of touched on this last week, but that returning to work, how men and women can be supported when returning to work after time out from things like being away from mental health, taking time away from mental health, being signed off by doctors for mental health issues, and then returning to work. And as well as, going away for treatments, coming back into a workplace. We often talk about reintegrating. A big topic that's, got a lot of support is obviously women returning to work post-maternity and things like that, being reintegrated back into the workplace, and how to make them feel welcomed back, but also back into the swing of things, but knowing that there's been a big life-changing event in the meantime, and having children. How do you think men and women can be supported when returning to the workplace when it comes to things like being away because of mental health and or have gone through life-changing events such as prostate and testicular cancer?
Yeah, it's a really interesting point to raise, Bill. I think, when you're looking at parental leave, you've got a bundle of joy. Like you're leaving work for something really positive, right? And then you're returning to work and you've got that bundle of joy in your life, right? Like that's the most joyful experience for any family to welcome a young child. So I think, the other scenarios that you're talking about, whether it's a male or a female or all of our fabulous friends in between, when you're taking time out for your health, it's a very different situation, right? And our work is part of our identity, and I think, when you're starting a family, you're okay because you're distracted by something really positive, and I think, that then becomes, your children become part of your identity. But when you're taking time out for something that is stressful, or something that'll be grueling on your body, or something that can be really uncertain, you're stepping away from work and you're not wanting to. So you're losing that routine, you're losing the getting up of a morning to go to work, you're losing your social network as well. And then, if it is cancer treatments, right, this can lead to other things. I mean, we've done a lot of work and a lot of research, and we're very passionate about, both prostate cancer and testicular cancer have an impact on men's sexual health, which then has an impact on their mental health. But I really do feel that loss of purpose while you're going through treatment and just losing your routine. I don't think we recognize that and how significant that is enough. I know if I had to step away from my work, because my work has always defined me, even when I was a florist, right? It's always been part of who Eden is. I'm going through the cancer treatment. I'm incredibly stressed about that. And then I'm also not doing what I love, because I love my work, and more of us love our work, right? Work isn't, the chore that it used to be. We seek work that brings us purpose and that is aligned to us as a whole human. And losing that, I think, is so challenging for people. And then in the end of that, it's like throw them back in after you've been through all of that, right? Like you've been on this roller coaster and you've lost so much of who you are, and then you've got to return and be the person you were before you left. So it's a really challenging time, I think, to return from any kind of health treatment, whether that's mental health or physical health or disease or cancer or whatever you're going through. I think we need to wrap our arms around those people more. But I don't know what the answer is to that, Bill. Like it's so complex, and yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it really isn't. And I think it's also not only complex, it's very case by case specific, isn't it, as well, right? There's no kind of one size fits all policy that you can roll out across a business for such a scenario, because also, how do you plan for such a scenario as well, right? It's not something that you're growing a business and setting up a team. How do you plan for that scenario? But perhaps if it's ingrained in the culture of, being understanding that the people that are employed are humans, the human beings, and it's way more important what's going on in their lives than anything they do at work. You know, if they've got something going on, they need to feel they've got the time, the space to be able to recover in their own way before coming back into work and expected to be up to full speed. But that might be different for every single person that comes back. So just understanding that for every person as well.
Recruitment? Yeah, it needs a refresh. 47 billion euros wasted globally every year. Outdated processes, poor hires, time loss. That's not a crack, that's a sinkhole. But that's where we come in.
We're not here to paper over the cracks. We're here to tear the whole thing down and rebuild it. We don't have a talent bench. We have an agile community ready to flex and flow with your needs. Forget traditional RPOs. Forget that one-size-fits-all nonsense. Recruitment doesn't work that way anymore. With responsive, reliable recruitment support when you need it. We're 100% reliable. No fixed bench, no cookie-cutter solutions.
What we do have is an obsession with delivering agile, authentic, noble talent solutions. And the best part, you don't have to settle for good enough anymore.
It's about talent, real talent, embedded into your team like it was always meant to be there. Just a collective of top-tier recruiters, ready to deploy in days, not weeks. Basically, we're not your average recruiters.
Actually, we're the exact opposite of that.
We don't just send over CVs and cross our fingers. We're in your corner, repping your brand, your culture, your values.
It's time to evolve. It's time to think differently. It's time to just ask the Rec Hub.
The other big topic I was really wanted to make sure we had plenty of time to talk about was AI, because I know that's something that you and I have got a lot of. We speak about a lot, and we touched on it last week, and it's such a topic at the moment that is coming up everywhere. It seems in talent acquisition at the moment, it's going to replace all of our jobs, apparently, if you believe what you read everywhere. But AI in talent acquisition is obviously is a huge topic. When we spoke about it, I mean, you mentioned it earlier. I mean, sorry, you didn't. I mentioned it earlier about this doing more with less, and then you mentioned AIs in the team as almost the extra team member that you've got in your team at the moment. It seems like it is something that is being able to support recruiters and doing a good job. But one of the big things I struggle with at the moment is the personalization of AI, how AI is having an impact on recruitment processes, positively and negatively when it comes to candidate experience. We're living in a world right now where there's a lot of candidates applying for jobs. There's a lot of people therefore getting rejected from jobs. I was at a conference a couple of months back now, where I think, I can't remember the exact numbers, but it was something like, it was the head of talent acquisition at Heineken speaking, and they said they get 20,000 applications every year. They hire 2,000 people. You know, there's a hell of a lot of people getting rejected. And whilst, you know, we don't have all the resources to go and reject every one of them personally in person, like you would love to be able to do, you still need to be able to do it in a way that is personal to them. They feel respected, they feel heard, they feel, you know, that they've been involved in the recruitment process, especially if they get past the first stage. And the reason I bring this up is it's also even more, I think, prevalent in a company like Movember, because a lot of people are applying to work at Movember because they might have an affiliation with the charity, with the organization itself, because of personal experiences or something that they've gone through. So they're not just applying for it like they would be applying for a job at Coca-Cola, for example. They're applying for a company that they might have a deep connection to. So first of all, a few questions wrapped up in all of that. The first one being, how has AI helped manage the high volumes of applications that you've got there? And then secondly, what are you guys doing to make sure that you are keeping it personal, if you are keeping it personal, which I'm sure you are, for the people that are applying and having to get rejected from a company, like I say, that they might have a deep connection to?
Yeah, look, I might roll those two questions together. They're really, really well linked. And
Yeah.
you're absolutely right. Like Movember, when I started with Movember, the application was like, don't want to offend anyone that worked at Movember before me, that it was quite dry. And it did feel quite corporate. So it was very much doing a traditional job application. And we had the option to attach a cover letter if you wanted to. Right now, when I started and started recruiting for Movember, I started reading some of those cover letters, and they were pretty powerful. And I pretty very quickly realized that people were drawn to Movember to do good, and they were also drawn to Movember because they had a personal story to tell. And I myself do as well. And losing my uncle, in his 50s to suicide, it's one of the reasons why I mow. And one of the reasons why I would grow a moustache every year prior to working for Movember. So, there are these really raw personal connections for our candidates. So I decided, hey, well, I want to hear more about that. So I really hyper personalized the recruitment process where, there are free text box for people to share why they mow and to share their connection to our purpose and our values. I went even further, and people are sharing their Spotify playlists and, whether they can play La Cucaracha on their teeth with their thumbnail, right? Like, it's really, really personalized. And then for me, the challenge was, okay, well, people are being vulnerable and they're sharing their stories with me. 200 applications for one role. I can, as a sole operator at the time, like, I can probably talk to 10 of them and put them through a phone interview, but 200 people that are so strongly connected to what we do and our cause and our purpose, it felt really disrespectful for me to send them a standardized rejection, and I had to do it to start with, and I made it very kind and very personal, but still people would reach out and say, look, Eden, I really want to change the face of men's health, and, I may not tick every box, but I can do this. And if you would just have some faith in me, I'm going to change the world, right? And I knew I had to do something to make sure that every single application that came through had some way of interacting with us and being able to showcase their skills and demonstrate their capability, but also share their story in more detail. So I have a really good, solid understanding of who they are and what they can do, and be able to talent pool on that as well. So yeah, enter agentic AI and my other team member, Joel, who interviews everyone.
Tell us about Joel.
Cool. Joel's pretty cool. Joel's cool. So really all I do with Joel is I feed him a PD, and then I have a trigger for applications as they come through. Now it is opt-in, opt-out. I'm very mindful that not everyone is ready to have a conversation with someone like Joel and would prefer to communicate with a human. 97% so far have actually chosen the AI. I don't know whether they just don't like the look of me, but anyway, the vast majority are going through and catching up with Joel. I think a lot of people are very curious about these kind of things at the moment as well, and just want to experience, go, oh my gosh, like technology's out of control. And really what he does is he has a conversation for half an hour. I don't tell him what to say. He doesn't have a set list of questions. He has a PD with core, responsibilities and, what we're looking for. And he opens up and has a really warm conversation with candidates. And that data comes back to me to have a listen to have a read over. It's transcribed and, it's summarized using Copilot. So I can see a really quick, flashy snapshot of everything that went on in the conversation. And it just gives people that opportunity to engage and not, spend all that time submitting an application just to get that heartbreaking thanks, but no thanks a couple of days later.
That's awesome. So is that for the people, I mean, including myself, that haven't interviewed with an AI, how does it like physically look? I mean, we're talking, is there a person that looks like a robot on the screen? What does it actually
It will, mate. Do you know what? I am actually exploring that at the moment because there is now, technology has now gone to the next step. But this is a phone interview at the moment, Bill. So you actually click on a web link. And the good thing about it, it's actually really good, for candidates. Another reason I think they're choosing it is because you can do that in your own time, your own space, where you feel the most relaxed. Rather than just having someone call a number on your phone and you're like on the tube and it's Eden from Movember wanting to talk about a, job opportunity that you've applied for. You've got that time to be able to prepare yourself, get in the zone, do some breathing exercises, and call Joel whenever you're ready. So yeah, it's phone interview.
That's awesome, isn't it? And I think it's like really important what you mentioned there about, you get the summary, you get to read, so everyone feels like they're not almost, because there is, I guess, people might feel, I'm just getting to interview with an AI and it's not going to get reviewed. They might still have the same feeling, I'm not getting a first interview, I'm just getting an AI interview and that didn't get me anywhere. But to know people listening to this and reading about it, it does get reviewed. The summary is there, and it's a way that companies can actually get more people interviews as opposed to just following off that first interview to an AI and not doing anything with it. This is actually a way of actually seeing everyone's application way fairer than just a piece of paper and trying to read through everyone rushed and not giving every CV the fairest chance of a review either.
And that's right. And then, following up from there, this is where the human skills come in. And when recruiters are saying, oh, our jobs are at risk because of this technology is never going to, have the level of empathy that a human being has. And what it means for me is that I can actually, if it is a, thanks, but no thanks. But I can say, look, I loved what you shared about your connection to Movember, and thank you very much for everything that you do. And, I'll tee you up with our fundraising team and they'll, help you with some merch to support your campaign, like rah, rah, rah. But then I can also say, and I loved the experience that you shared from the marketing campaigns that you did with Comic Relief, and I really loved this social media campaign that you did. It really spoke to me, and I went on YouTube and I had a look at it, and congratulations. It's that level of personalization that, I think it's the reason why we got into this game, and due to the sheer volume and capacity, we haven't really been able to do well at any time in the recruitment industry, and this technology is allowing us the space to be able to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And how does it work with, so the summary part that it sends over after, does it have a recommendation as to what to do next with the application based on the JD that you've fed it? Would it say recommending for first interview, recommended for rejection, or does it say that at the end of it?
No, it will give me strengths. So it will give me bullet points of where they've demonstrated strengths, and it does little quotes as well from the transcript against those strengths, and those are mapped out to the core competencies and skills in the PD. It will give me red flags. Now, that doesn't mean, anything like, alarming, but it's more things like, oh, there was a salary misalignment. When we talked about salary, they're actually seeking £20,000 more than what this role is actually paying, and they've expressed that they're not willing to take a pay drop, or could be a red flag that they're not able to ever attend, working from our Clerkenwell office because they live in Manchester and they hadn't put that on their application. And, all of those kind of things come up on red flags. And there could be little things like, when asked a question about our values, they weren't really able to connect with them. There can be those little flags in there as well, but it doesn't recommend who we move forward to. And I don't think the technology ever will effectively be able to do that, because we, this is a craft, what we do, Bill, right? Like we have been doing this for a long time. We have a lot of intuition. And I believe in gut feeling as well, but we also have all of those other factors where we're considering, perhaps the makeup of a team in terms of diversity, the value that, bringing someone in from a different background or with different experiences, will outweigh the skills and capabilities that particular person would do, because they'll, shift thought leadership or whatever that might be, all of those things that a human being, it's instinct, rather than, like AI is always going to be factual, right? It's based on demonstrated experiences and skills.
Right. And it's for anyone that's thinking about going down this route of getting agentic AI and having, AI interviewer, have you learned anything from it that's gone wrong that you think actually, when I did it the first time we did it like this and now we've changed it to this, or, and on the other side, what's gone right that you would recommend people do if they're thinking about this? How would you recommend it? What would you recommend they do? And what learns can you teach them that you had already?
Yeah, look, I think you need to make sure that the voice is authentic to your brand as possible when you're looking at agentic AI. So when we first rolled Joel out and I was listening to the playbacks, he talked way too slow. Now, I'm not suggesting he should talk as fast as I do because, as you can tell, listeners and Bill, I talk a million miles an hour, right? But Movember, we're edgy, and it was just basically speeding him up a little bit. There are nuances that you learn along the way. With any AI, you're never going to get it right, and you're never going to get it polished when you roll it out. You need to be comfortable that you're rolling out something that is probably an MVP, and you're going to evolve and learn and test and change. He didn't understand, because it's Australian technology that I use. He didn't understand the pound sign. So I rolled it out for a role in the UK, and he was trying to say, 28,000 pounds a year. And he went, 28 squiggle, whatever he did, he just couldn't work that out, so you're learning and evolving, and you're working with your partner to get it where it needs to be. And I think you just need to be comfortable with that. And candidates just found it really funny. So, it's fine. So, yeah.
And where would you see AI going next with Movember? Anything that you've got in the pipeline that you'd love to roll out there in the team, or you'd like to adapt that you're currently working on that would help speed things up? Whether or not it can be solved and technology exists already or not, but what do you think would be interesting for you at Movember there in the team and the setup that you've got?
Look, I wouldn't say to speed things up is what I would love. I would actually, when I talked about that, feedback loop, for AI to be able to recognize perhaps ways people can develop. Like I always, would love in my line of work to be able to provide career coaching to every candidate that goes through, and we can't, right? Like in the agency world, you do it a little bit. You'll find a candidate and you'll work with them, and you'll, suggest clients for them and all of that kind of stuff. I'd love AI to be able to support that for every application. I'm sure it will get there. It's just, nothing that I've seen at the moment. I would like Joel to become video, so it can interact and be more human, believe it or not. And to be able to have that kind of experience where I think people, loosen up when they're seeing a face more than when they're hearing a voice, and able to form that connection and comfort. It's whether people are going through in the back of their head going, I know this isn't really a human, and I've seen all those Tom Cruise deep fakes out there, but we'll see. And I think that technology is already in existence, and I think we're going to see that rolling out pretty soon. I'd like to play around with it and experiment with it. I think I survey everyone. I'm a person that the more data I can gather, the better, and that helps my decisions and my strategy. And I might roll something like that out, and everyone goes, "No, I absolutely hated that. It was the weirdest experience of my life." And then I'll move back to phone, right? Like it's just trial and error. We just don't know. We don't know what's going on in this world.
No, you really don't, and that's what's amazing about it. And also, I think sometimes as well, because the technology is so new at the start, it may seem even better than what it actually is. I mean, people are starting to notice now that, even just as simple as ChatGPT at the start when it was rolled out, everyone was like, this is genius, this is brilliant. And now people are starting to realize there's a lot of like holes in using it. And if it's not used properly or not trained properly, it really does start to fall apart. And is actually a really counterproductive tool than a productive tool. And I think that's the same in it, like you say, trial and error with a lot of the technologies that are going to get rolled out over the next few years. And I think the biggest part to all of this is actually the adoption of it, and then like it becoming normal in interview processes. People are actually, the more people are doing interviews with it, the more people are comfortable doing interviews with AI. And it becomes a much more normal process, and therefore the results are a lot better once it's a lot more normal. What have you seen you said there 90, I think you said 97% of people were happy to do an interview.
Yeah.
I assume you're then doing the feedback after around how they found the process. What did they think about it?
Absolutely.
Have you got any, what's the feedback usually like there? People feel like it was good or bad, or what?
Yeah. And look, if they've got a good connection, they love it. I'm a realist, and I like to share when things don't go right. There are times where people don't have a strong connection in terms of an internet connection. And it's been quite jolty for them. just like it is when you're having a Zoom call and it's jolty. It's exactly the same.
Yeah.
So that's where some of the challenges are. And, we're pretty clear to say, make sure that you've got, all your bars on your reception when you call, or you're connected to strong Wi-Fi. That's been, where people have not enjoyed it so much. And, to the point, I'm quite happy to say it. Someone said to one of our founders, "Oh my God, I had to talk to this robot and the connection was terrible and we kept dropping out and it was the worst experience I've ever had." And, he told me, and, I tweaked it and things are better, right? Like you do fail, and that's cool. The vast majority just think it's interesting. I think I don't know about you, but I think everyone is just curious and fascinated where all of this is going to go. And when you are presented something, it was like when we were first presented ChatGPT, to your point, and we were so curious about it that we spent days experimenting with it and our minds were blown, right? Like I think that's why people enjoy it. But when I listen to the playback, people don't feel robotic. They really loosen up. They tell their story. They explain their experience. They do really great behavioral examples. And it just feels like they're in an interview. But I suppose you show up to an interview, whether it's a human being or not, and you do kind of, put your best foot forward. And I think people are doing the same thing there too.
Yeah. And I think just from listening to that, it sounds like one of the things that's really got it working well there is this setup. It sounds like you've put a lot of prep into the prepping of interviewees, sorry, coming into it. Like, here's what to expect, here's what's going to happen, here's what is going to happen after. And I think that settles a lot of nerves and normalizes the interview process. I think if the setup is there and they're explained to what's going to happen and how it's going to work, I think that will help make a lot of people feel more comfortable in the interview process.
And give them the choice, and I don't think I'll ever move away from that. I think people have the right to opt in and opt out, just like, you give people the opportunity to have special adjustments in an interview. And, neurodiverse folk, like, where we know providing them with interview questions prior to the interview will really help them put their best foot forward. We can't say, this is our process, you're using AI, like it or lump it, right? Like we've got to make sure that people are opting in and they're comfortable, or opting out because they're not comfortable. And I don't think we should ever change that. I think being able to give people the opportunity to be their best self at interview, regardless whether that's with a human being or whether that's with AI, we should never let go of that.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And I think the last point, because I could talk about this forever, the last point I really wanted to touch on was the opposite side of this. We often talk about AI and how it can improve candidate experience when it's used correctly, how it can support talent acquisition leaders in being able to give a good candidate experience. But I think that AI is actually helping a lot of talent acquisition leaders now juggle the workload that they've got on, because, like I say, there's a lot more applications than there has been. There's a lot. Talent acquisition teams in businesses are getting usually smaller, and they have done in the last couple of years, got smaller. Again, using that phrase, doing more with less. Unfortunately, it does exist in the corporate world where companies are having to do more with less. And that puts a lot of mental pressure on TA leaders to make sure they are still giving a good candidate experience. Because I don't want to, dehumanize them, but it's like they do have a lot of pressure as TA leaders.
Yeah.
They do have these roles that they feel guilty when they're rejecting applications. I speak to a lot of them. They feel guilty when they're not able to get back. They often get a lot of mud thrown at them, when on LinkedIn saying this they didn't give me enough time. And it's like, well, you see Google reviews go up and things like that, when a lot of them, there are bad TA leaders out there, obviously, but there are good ones out there trying to do the best they possibly can with the time and resources they have got, and not able to give the full candidate experience they would love to be able to do. And I think AI is giving them that a lot more now, being able to juggle their workload and being able to do more with the tools they've got there.
Absolutely. And look, this is another point on the do more with less, right? Like if we think back, it was just over 2 years ago that we were still typing out notes as we were interviewing people, right? Like, and that blows my mind. Like, how on earth did I ever form a connection with a candidate while I was typing on my laptop while I was talking to them? And go even further back, I mean, I was a recruiter that had a clipboard, right? And I was scrolling, right? Like,
Yeah.
you know, so we no longer need to type up our notes. We can have everything summarized and transcribed, and all of this time that we're able to get back and to be able to reinvest that time in that human experience. I think is so important, and I think it's a wonderful thing for our industry. And like I said, it's the reason we get into it. I think, you know, we are on a roller coaster every day. I mean, we go through the full range, you know, speaking of mental health, we go through the full range of emotions as recruiters and talent acquisition professionals. And, you know, we're always busy, and we always will be, but hopefully we're getting busier with the things that we want to do, and the things that bring us joy. But, you know, it's a stretch of emotions. You know, we're elated when we place a candidate. We're deflated when we don't. When that candidate accepts another offer, we're deflated. We're, you know, overjoyed when they do accept it. And it's all of that, right? We're stretched every day on, you know, a roller coaster of emotions. And the more that we can do to support ourselves and, you know, free up our time to do more meaningful work and fill our cup more, the better. And AI is huge for that.
Yeah. I feel like that's a brilliant summary of what we've spoken about.
I just like that was a ramble at the end, but that's me.
I did.
Talking
I
about
mean, I
bringing
think
authentic self to the table.
yeah, exactly. But it's, you know, that I think for me, AI is scary for a lot of people still. I think a lot of people still see it as a technology that is they don't know how to interact with it properly, or is it going to be replacing their jobs? And these kind of things creates a lot of stress around the technology. But actually, what I'm seeing when I'm speaking to TA leaders and when I'm speaking to, you know, like we've just spoken about for the last hour, when used properly, and when set up properly, it can have a really, really positive impact on candidate experience, and also give a lot more candidates a lot more chance in an interview process, rather than the other way around. Because I know from experience, people that don't have these technologies put in place properly at the moment, they're getting 400 or 500 applications and then actually going, "Oh, I'm not even going to get through those. Does anyone know anyone that's good for this job?" And not even looking through
Right.
you know, that many applications. And I also know companies now that don't even advertise some roles because they think, I can't get back to that many candidates. We're going to get so many people apply. It's not going to make us look great that we can't get back to that many candidates. So let's not advertise it. Let's just do a headhunt campaign and go out there and try and, you know, cherry pick who we want for the role rather than advertising it. And I think that's a big issue. So, you know, when used properly, AI in your interview process can allow you to get speaking, and give a lot more opportunity to a lot more candidates, which is a very positive change, I think.
Absolutely. We need to embrace it, play with it,
Absolutely.
be curious, experiment, and have fun. Nothing to be afraid of. You use it in the way that works for you.
Yes, exactly that. Exactly that. And try it. You know, as TA leaders, I think you've got to be trying new technologies, and you've got to be constantly out there trying to develop and learn, and not saying, well, we've always done it like this. You know,
That's right.
you've got to be out there trying to learn and develop your processes in the same way that you might look at a new ATS system, or the same way that you might look at a new interview process internally. What tools and technologies can we use to enhance candidate experience and help our company hire the best people, which is what our jobs are really to do. The last question is, what one piece of professional advice would you give to your younger self?
Oh, to my younger self, I think to probably to back myself and to be my authentic self. I think I spent a lot of my youth, you know, perhaps trying to be what I thought the world wanted to see, and particularly in the workplace. I know when I moved into the white collar space, you know, coming from a creative background, you know, I put a suit on and a shell on every day basically, and didn't bring my authentic self to work. But the minute I was comfortable with my quirks and comfortable with the fact that I am a bit of a rambler and I go off in tangents and I'm quirky as all hell, that's when I started to succeed. And I think, I wish I would have learnt that lesson a lot younger, because I don't know where I'd be now. I might be, I might be the Prime Minister of Australia. Who knows?
Still time. Still plenty of time.
Still time, right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Oh, that was brilliant. Well, thank you so much for your time today. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on. And we mentioned at the start in the pre-ramble to us kicking off this about Movember and your campaign and what you're going to be doing in November to raise funds. So I just want to make sure we've got some time to talk about that as well. So if you wouldn't mind telling everyone what you're going to be doing in November for the Movember campaign this year to raise funds for Movember.
Absolutely. And this is the great thing about Movember. It doesn't have to be about moustaches. And I think, I've got a moustache all the time, and I will shave off and grow one, but that's
Which I'm very jealous of, by the way. I'm incredibly cash.
take a hell of time. But I think that wasn't big enough for me. So I've decided, and I used to love cycling pre-COVID, but I've decided I'm going to do an epic commute to work. I live 100 Ks from my office, and
Wow.
I am going to ride 100 Ks to work, and that's going to be my commute for Movember. So yeah, you follow me on LinkedIn and you'll see all the activity. I'm sharing content already as I'm training for it. And yeah, hoping to raise 5,000 Australian dollars. It's quite a big target too. Watch this space.
Amazing. Well, good luck. I hope it goes well, and good luck with all the training, which is the part that nobody sees. That's the tough part. The fun part is doing the actual part at the end of it. That's the finishing. That's the final stretch. It's all the training in the dark that nobody sees. So good luck with that. Good luck with the fundraising. Thank you again for coming on, and looking forward to speaking again soon.
Oh, Bill, it's been a pleasure, and thank you for all your support. We love our Mo Bros and our ambassadors, and we just think you're the most fabulous man in the world. So thank you so much for all your support for Movember. You're an incredible human. Thank you.
No, thank you very much. And I promise to stick to the rules this year and shave it all off and start from scratch, even if it does grow the tiniest bit of fluff.
Good man. Love it. Take care.
Enjoy your evening.
You too.
Thanks.
See you, mate. Bye.
We're supporting Movember by bringing the TA community together to run and raise funds for men's health. We're hosting 2 TA 5Ks, one in Manchester on the 18th of November and one in London on the 20th. Find out more and book your spot below.